Assalamu alaikum, welcome in program debate. I am your host Tariq Khan. Today we'll explore and analyze Pakistan's relations with major powers, their priorities and interest in the region, especially in Afghanistan. Let me introduce and honor for me to bring our guest, Professor Dr. Minhas Majeed Khan. You are from Department of International Relations, University of Peshawar. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining
Thank you
and
so
most
much,
welcome in
Tariq
program.
Khan, for inviting me to your program.
Ma'am, how would you analyze Pakistan-US relations under President Joe Biden administration?
Um, that's very interesting question, and I would say that most often we say that when Republicans are in office, Pakistan's relations are more cordial in terms of Republicans' engagement in different conflicts or wars in different regions of the world. And particularly when the region is South Asia or Southwest Asia, Pakistan is always needed by United States as an ally to achieve its objectives. And on the other hand, Democrats, we see that they are more concerned about human rights and issues like these. However, I would say that after President Trump leaving the White House and Joe Biden's rise to power is unlikely to change the issue-specific or transactional nature of the relationship between the two nations. But it will present Pakistan with opportunities to strengthen its strategic and economic ties with the United States, and particularly so when United States is planning its withdrawal from Afghanistan. So Washington has to redefine its interest in the region. As for Afghanistan, because for 20 years the war in Afghanistan has shaped United States and Pakistan's relations. Its involvement in Afghanistan during Cold War, when Soviet invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan became a frontline state, a major ally in that war against the communist Soviet Union. And after 9/11, Pakistan once again became an important actor in Afghanistan for the United States, serving its interest. So a war in Afghanistan, I believe, has shaped the ties between the two countries. And at a time when this dynamic is expected to change, Biden presidency can play the foreign policy, can help the foreign policy establishment in Islamabad to forge new partnership with Washington based on the two nations' mutual geopolitical and economic interest. One thing that we must keep in mind is that Joe Biden knows Pakistan, and it was not the case with the former President Trump. Biden has traveled to the country several times as vice president, and he was one of the main key architect, along with Senator John Kerry, of the Kerry-Lugar-Berman Act of 2009 that paved the way for US providing annual civilian assistance of around 1.5 billion to Pakistan from 2010 till 2014. But perhaps more importantly, contrary to Trump's unpredictable and at times erratic approach to foreign affairs, President Biden is a politician who believes in dealing with other nations through institutions. So this means the relationship between the US and Pakistan will be more stable during his presidency than one could expect in the Trump era. However, America's desire to contain China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative and its rise as a global economic power means its strategic and geopolitical interests in the Indo-Pacific region in more aligned with India than Pakistan during his presidency. While India is China's main rival in the region, Pakistan has growing economic and strategic ties with China. And if you see India policy under the Trump, the US moved more closer to India than ever before. In his last days, if you remember, he signed the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement with India, which is to provide India real-time access to American geospatial intelligence, enhancing the accuracy of its missile-armed drones and automated systems. Having said that, Biden will undoubtedly keep supporting India against China in the region, but unlike Trump, he is also expected to take steps to restore the US role as a strategic balancer between India and Pakistan. With that, the Biden administration is also expected to be more vocal on its criticism of India's oppressive policies in Indian-held Kashmir. This will give Pakistan an opportunity to more efficiently highlight India's human rights violation and abuses and international law violation in disputed territory at international forums and move its Kashmir policy forward. One thing, but at the same time, I believe Biden administration would also expect Pakistan to be specific about the issues of concern that United States might have, like for example, it is critical of the human rights violation or media censorship and the mistreatment of minorities, whether they are ethnic minorities or religious minorities. It would be a concern for United States, and it would always pressurize Pakistan to take up the issues more seriously. Because if in 2019, the US placed Pakistan on the country of particular concern for violation of human rights and particularly minority rights, which is something that US in the past has not done. Though in its country report from time to time, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has warned Pakistan to something seriously about the issues like I just mentioned, religious minorities issues, then media censorship and other human rights violation. But they never placed Pakistan on the country of particular list because Pakistan was serving their interest. though Pakistan did the same during Trump era when it played a very important role in Afghan peace talks. But it was placed on the blacklist. Uh, One can argue that because Trump was more inclined towards India for its for economic interest, U.S. economic interest, since India was a big market for them. Biden will continue to pressure Islamabad to make improvements in these areas. And Pakistan will also face increased pressure from Washington to guarantee the safety of its nuclear arsenal. Because earlier, from time to time, even if it was President Obama, then Trump, and now Biden, they would have concerns about its nuclear weapons, that they might fall in the wrong hands. So again, this would be an issue, and the Biden administration will expect further action from Pakistan regarding the issue, and at the same time against armed groups based within its borders that are not only creating violence. Mostly, I think the relations would be normalized, knowing Pakistan's important role and Pakistan being a stakeholder. United States consider it as an important country to bring Taliban, the Afghan government, to the negotiating table along with the United States, so that a way for a peace can be made.
Will the United States of America recognize Pakistan's efforts in Afghanistan as well as war on terror under the Joe Biden administration? And do you think or view any shift or transition in Joe Biden's approach towards Afghanistan as well as Pakistan?
Well, I believe that there has always been this blame game between Pakistan and United States as far as efforts regarding peace process in Afghanistan is concerned. But one thing is for sure, that United States recognizes Pakistan's role. It cannot negate Pakistan's role in as a main stakeholder in bringing about peace in Afghanistan. And as far as US recognition of its role, I believe US recognize it, that Pakistan has a role in it. Without Pakistan, peace in Afghanistan is not possible. And for Pakistan, peace in Afghanistan is important, because peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan as well. So I think they have recognized that role of Pakistan. And this is one thing that Joe Biden is expected to pursue a policy towards Pakistan where there is a less aggression in his tone, and more, a tone of a friendly tone, so that their goal in Afghanistan is achieved.
Ma'am, how would you analyze and enlighten the significance of peace and stability in Afghanistan for Pakistan and China, and what role China and Pakistan playing in Afghanistan and can play in Afghanistan? What is your analysis?
Okay, that's a very good question, because if we see the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, whether it is planned or they, abruptly withdraw from Afghanistan, though Biden has, Biden intention would be to keep some number of American forces in Afghanistan. This withdrawal can create two opposite scenarios for Afghanistan. In the worst case, it will repeat 1989 and 90 situation that engulfed the country in a long cycle of violence and instability when the Soviet was present in Afghanistan. And soon after the Soviet withdrawal, the US left Afghanistan on its own, which led to a civil war in Afghanistan, and they are still paying the price of that war in the form of violence and instability. But if seen in positive sense, since foreign occupying forces have historically been resisted by Afghan people, the US withdrawal might remove this irritant and pave the way for negotiations among feuding elements. Now, regardless of what side the US situation finally turns, two main countries, China and Pakistan, will be affected from Afghanistan, any situation in Afghanistan. And at the same time, no bilateral efforts are more relevant and crucial to Afghanistan peace than can be made by anyone but Beijing and Islamabad due to their distinct advantages. Now, these advantages, I would say, can be political and economic as well. And out of all the major powers and regional countries, China is known for its neutrality and non-interference in Afghanistan's internal affair throughout the history. This is acknowledged not only by Afghan government, but its rival Taliban and the international community at large. And in addition, as reconstruction of Afghanistan requires large-scale assistance, I believe China is a country that would be, in a position to help in reconstruction of Afghanistan, because it is the world's second largest economy and it is willing to contribute in its capacity. On the other hand, Pakistan has vast experience of dealing with Afghan affairs. Well, most of the critics would say that Pakistan has meddled in Afghanistan's internal affair. The geographic proximity, then the religious, cultural ties, and the ethnic bonds further highlight Pakistan's significance as far as its role in Afghanistan is concerned. So Pakistan is part of almost every process dealing with the final Afghan peace settlement. And it is also important that a stable Afghanistan is critically important to the core interest of China and Pakistan. Now, for both, I believe the importance converge, because China engagement in Afghanistan would be to support its Belt and Road Initiative. It would want to have a peaceful Afghanistan, so that the connecting corridors can go through Afghanistan, and that connection is to be uninterrupted. Those corridors are to be secure for China, and that is only possible when there is peace in Afghanistan. For Pakistan, I believe that, like I said earlier, that peace in Afghanistan is crucial for peace in Pakistan. So this underlines the necessity of their comprehensive coordination as the Afghan situation is poised to take a new direction. And this Belt and Road Initiative of China is directly affected by what happens in Afghanistan. Many branches and offshoots of Belt and Road Initiative pass from a region which fall within the range of tremors emanating from Afghanistan. And out of the 6 corridors, 3 are being developed under the 3 that are being developed under Belt and Road Initiative are in geographical proximity to Afghanistan. Number 1, the new Eurasian land bridge, China Central Asia West Asia corridor, and the China-Pakistan economic corridor. So on top of that, the instability in Afghanistan will directly affect stability of the Xinjiang, which is China's core internal security challenge. Similarly, Pakistan's own instability is linked with peace in Afghanistan. The present government has restructured Pakistan's policies by prioritizing economic development over geostrategic imperatives because the new government realizes this is not possible without peace in Afghanistan. His earnest desire for Afghan peace, which he termed crucial to Pakistan, the Prime Minister, Islamabad, I think, seems to have changed its policy of preferences for support of a particular group to Afghan-led and Afghan-owned settlement, and that has been reiterated by the foreign ministers meeting by Pakistani foreign minister. So this change, I believe, now is acknowledged by the outside powers as well. For example, I would give example of Pakistan, that how US see its role, and it has for the first time stopped, their long time and an old mantra of do more, and now has requested Pakistan to requested Pakistan's support to negotiate with Taliban. So I think, the triangle of Afghanistan, China, and Pakistan, and the relations among 3, a trilateral relation, are important. China's, though various critique would say that China is focusing more on security, but at the same time, it is also focusing on the economic aspects of peace in Afghanistan. And so is the case with Pakistan.
How would you analyze China, Pakistan, Russia strategic cooperation and United States of America interest and priorities in the region, especially in the Afghanistan? How would you analyze?
Again, I would say that This is very important because, I always tell my students that the world order is moving away from unipolarity to multipolarity, and that we see in the form of different major powers that are willing to, have a say in international affairs. Russia has a long history of involvement in Afghanistan security that we had seen during Cold War, and now it shares Pakistan's strategic interest of combating terrorism and militancy, and particularly the Islamic State of Khorasan province. It made Pakistan and Russia cooperation on Afghanistan very natural. Afghanistan's peace process, I mean, very natural development. Both these countries have made efforts to mainstream the Taliban. And Islamabad has long encouraged political talks with Taliban, which, if in power, would help Pakistan's geostrategic interest in the region, as most of the writing says, or the debates that we daily hear from experts on media. Russia recognition of the Taliban again has endorsed Pakistan's stance, and also establishing Russia's own role in the peace process has helped its image as a power broker in the region. And that is a very important development, that I must say, that after the disintegration of Soviet Union, Russia once again is asserting its role at the world stage. Then Russia and Pakistan have been improving ties since 2014, when Russia surprisingly lifted its arm embargo on Pakistan. Then the emergence of NATO Pakistan may have been seen as a valuable regional partner for Russia. Sorry. The transfer of significant military technology, then annual exercises between security forces, and the visits of top military officials of both the countries, Russia and Pakistan, to operational areas have played a very crucial role, and particularly has helped Pakistan in targeting extremist elements operating along the country's border with Afghanistan. The end of the Russian arms embargo has also helped in building trust between the two countries, and has paved the way for new avenues of military cooperation, such as the landmark agreement for Russian training of Pakistani military personnel. While the beginning of military operation can be traced for convergence of interest in Afghanistan, the ongoing strength of military ties indicates a potentially more robust partnership in the years to come. And the growing cooperation in strategic realm has prompted both nations to coordinate their policies. For example, Moscow and Islamabad have signed a bilateral naval agreement. Then the commander-in-chief of Russian ground forces met with Pakistan chief of army staff, where both the generals discussed forging strong and broad-based relations with Afghanistan. If we include China Pakistan and Russia strategic cooperation, or if we analyze that, I think in geopolitics, as we have seen during the post-World War One era, then post-World War Two world order, strategic realities can change with a very surprising speed. And even before countries realize its decisive shifts occurs, they shape the future for the years to come. This seems to be the case with the traditional cold rivals Russia and Pakistan, which of late have seen gradual warming of ties. Russia, as we see, was a traditional ally of India and supportive of Indian stance on Kashmir. But now we see that Russia is showing clear signs of cozying up to Pakistan. The mutual overtures between both the countries are part of a greater shift in international relations. In Europe, if we see, Russia is embroiled in a showdown with the West over Ukraine, with Moscow's military adventure in Crimea being followed by Western sanctions. In Asia Pacific, China's encroachment in South China Sea has also inflamed tensions with other Asia Pacific countries allied with the United States. So these developments, I think, have forced Russia and China to look for allies, which explain the bonhomie between the two powers of late. Then a question arises whether a partnership motivated by external factor could lead to an alliance of countries that formerly distrusted each other. But again, I would say that there's this old adage in international relations, and that is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And this fits perfectly well on the two countries. The single most important factor that overrides all other is their concurrent perception of the US and its policy of containment towards them. So China needs allies to change the world order, and it begins with Asia. Then China-Pakistan link is well known and is the most formidable leg of Russia, China, and Pakistan triangle. China, I would say, has been a traditional ally of Pakistan and has historically supported it against its arch rival India, both in terms of diplomacy as well as in military equipment. It is from here that the congruence of interest among the three states, Pakistan, China, and Russia, stems. For China and Russia, I believe the US is an anathema, a curse, which must dethrone from its which must be dethroned from its hegemonic position for their own security, according to the two countries. Then Pakistan has enough of an incentive to be a willing partner in Asian security architecture that is shaped by China. With India having diversified its military suppliers to include countries like United States and Israel, Russia no longer sees any impediment in establishing a strategic relationship with Pakistan. And in the future, one can see signs of integration between the three states as their abilities complement each other. Russia is an alternate source for Western military technology and energy supplies. Then China is economically more potent than Pakistan and Russia. With considerable foreign exchange reserves, looking to invest and in need of energy supplies. So say that Pakistan would have access to Russian technology, which is in fact the source for, and China as well, which is in fact a source for many Chinese products as well. Because sanctions hit Russia will have a new market for its defense equipments, although it may well in the future see some competition between Russia and China, because if we see both have this military capability or have war machines, war technology. So it is possible that Russia will continue to arm India along with China and now Pakistan. This strategic partnership between United States and China, because no country would stop dealing with their previous allies or previous partners, whether they were strategic partners or economic partners or whatever. But they would distance themselves when they see that their rival is now their friend's friend. So it is possible that China will continue to arm India along with China and Pakistan. Then both European Union and US have followed the strategy of supplying defense not only to India and Pakistan, India, but also Pakistan. But for them, arming Pakistan is something that, and Russia arming Pakistan would be something that United States would want to, contain. Because that implies that if Russia provides arms to Pakistan, that implies that Russia will no longer give preferential treatment to its historical friend India. Now, I think this triangular relationship between Russia, China, and Pakistan would be one that is making a history, because Russian entry into this alliance with the two countries, and particularly Pakistan, is something that that the history has not witnessed. Pakistan, I would say, has changed its policy of relying on a very far away friend, that is United States, is now looking around and is trying to approach the countries on its periphery, its neighboring countries, like for example Iran, and its foreign policy stands towards Russia. So these are, I think, changes that would be of significant importance after Joe Biden presidency, or Joe Biden's presence in the White House.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your valuable in-depth analysis on Pakistan's relations with major powers. I am really thankful to you for joining this program, and thank you so much again.
My pleasure.